GP bikes of the 1990s. Impossibly beautiful. Impossibly expensive. And almost impossible to buy. Until now. And it's not just fur coat and no knickers. It actually works.
So we took a trip to Yorkshire to meet Felix from Tumoto, the engineering artist behind these masterpieces.
So originally we started off because a customer bought a Yamaha YZR replica off eBay, sight unseen, and he bought it and then rode it and said it's just unrideable, it just doesn't work at all. And it was one of those 3MA conversions, you take a Yamaha YZR 250 3MA frame, you then convert it into putting an RD500 engine in, and it just was just wrong. The engine was in the wrong place. It didn't handle. When you braked, you had no weight transfer onto the front, so the front just skidded. So it was completely wrong. So then he said, "Can you fix it?" And looked at it, took a bunch of measurements, had access to a proper Rock 500 Yamaha, and compared it with that, all the measurements, and it's never going to work. And really, we could make a lot of modifications to the 3MA frame, but it would still be a big compromise. So he said, "Well, just build a new frame then." So that was the first frame that was built for replicas, and then that worked well, and then he said, "Right, so now I want an NSR 500 version."
So we just built an NSR 500 replica. How does that, because I've had projects in my garage that have gone no further than putting a seat unit on and thinking,
that's how most of them go. So the first thing you do is you start with the geometry of the race bike, right? So you get all the dimensions correct. You figure out where the center of gravity needs to be, and then you design the frame around that, and then essentially you just make the frame look like the original, right? Obviously it has to accommodate a different engine because you can't buy an NSR 500 engine, and so you have to make accommodations for those sorts of things, but other than that you just build it from lots of pictures and
it's sort of scratch built, Felix. If I was to look at an NSR 500 and then I look at this frame's going to look like the NSR 500 frame. But there's nothing like this that you can buy. So are you machining these parts and then you're putting the spars in and you're shaping that? My God, that's just...
everything is bespoke. I mean, literally on this bike, the only things that are off the shelf are the wheels, the brakes, the clip-ons, the controls, the rear shock, and everything else is bespoke.
Wow. So your background must be
engineering. Engineering.
But actually, what just fascinates me is you can, that you can do that. It's mad. Yeah. I find it mad that you can make something look so.
As I said, we've been doing it for over 15 years, right?
Yeah.
So in the beginning, we were, nowhere near as skilled as now, obviously, right?
So every iteration
every iteration gets better. So this is the newest iteration of the NSR 500, and compare that to the very first one built. it is, miles more authentic than the original.
Yeah,
right?
because you just
So the original we used like an R6 swinging arm.
Yeah.
Now we have a bespoke NSR500 copy that we make from scratch.
Wow.
We make the spars, we make all the machined parts, and then the rear sets are exact copies. Obviously the fairing is of original molds. The dashboard is a copy of the original, and the radiators are copies of the original. So now it's a top and bottom radiator like the original now.
Yeah.
So with every generation or every version that we make, we try to bring it up more and more.
Yeah, get more and more.
And the YZR will be even closer to the original than this NSR is to the NSR.
Which is saying something, because you
Yeah.
can't split these.
Yeah, exactly.
can you?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
so bodywork wise, exact replicas.
Yes. So
Now-
the bodywork is done by an external company, right? I don't do the carbon work.
No.
But they own the molds that they've taken off an original NSR 500. So
Right.
these are exact copies of the
And the silhouette has to be
absolutely yeah,
bang on,
yeah,
doesn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
And as I said, the tank is a big part of that. Having
Yeah.
the tank shape correct makes a big difference to the overall appearance of the bike.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah, the first one you wouldn't want to see.
But without the first one,
Oh no, yeah,
you're not
absolutely.
getting to the
Yeah,
fifth one or the sixth
absolutely.
one, are you?
So yeah, so this was one of the earlier tanks that we made. So this is also bespoke aluminium tank.
Were the aluminium on the original, or did they run carbon?
No,
at
I
all?
think they were aluminium.
Were
yeah,
they?
Yeah. And it's just not, it looks okay as a tank,
Yeah.
but it's just not quite the right shape. And when it's on the bike, it just doesn't look right.
Yeah. How do you find a man that's got a tank that you can get?
Well,
You know what I mean? Right? Is that just from years of?
Yeah, to get this tank, this is made from a scan of the original NSR 500 tank.
Right.
And it took me 3 or 4 years to find someone willing to
Scan it.
to scan it. And
Yeah.
obviously I had to pay him to get it scanned, and
Yeah.
then take that and then 3D printed a model, a full size model.
Yeah.
Tank maker takes that model and makes these tanks.
It's a work of art anyway, isn't it? The fact that a tank maker's gone and
Yeah,
shaped that. How to
Yeah, but that's what tank maker wants a buck. They want a shape so they can use their English wheel and start producing the shape for it, and then just test fit it, and they know how it how to do that.
3D printing must have moved this on leaps and bounds.
It absolutely has. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a fair number of 3D printed parts on here, not structural obviously, but accessory things. And without a 3D printer, it would be, it just would.
You get nowhere close.
Yeah. Well, the 3D printing makes a lot of things a lot easier.
Yeah.
Especially prototyping stuff. Prototyping rear sets. So the first version of the rear sets were 3D printed.
Yeah.
Air boxes get 3D printed first before you make them in carbon.
Of course.
And
then you can make all them changes, can't you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, before you pull the pin.
So that we do in house. So
Yeah.
all the 3D printing is done in house.
Brilliant. Suspension wise, forks, they look.
So forks, yes.
Posh.
So so these are replicas of the original forks, right? So they have the right look in terms of the little remote adjuster for the rebound.
Yeah.
But are based from off-the-shelf parts,
Okay.
and then have K-Tech internals.
Right.
So the fork bottoms,
Yeah.
they're machined by us, right? So they're designed off the original NSR 500.
And they've been then mated to a fork leg.
Yeah, to a fork like that.
And then you've got the internals to make them work.
One of the things is that the 500 bikes were a lot smaller than current superbikes are. So current superbikes are taller. So if you start off with normal super sport or superbike forks that tend to be about 1.5 inches or 2 inches too long, and so if you then put them in, then the bike just sits too high, the fairing doesn't fit properly. So it all, you change one thing and changes 10 other things as well.
Yeah, and how it sits at the front, because you see replicas, don't you? And they don't sit right at the front, and that destroys the whole look of that then, doesn't it?
And again, that's why I said earlier, you start with the geometry, right?
Yeah.
If you got the basic geometry, then everything else has to follow that, including the front forks.
Yeah.
They are non-radial brakes, because in those days they didn't run radial brakes. They're no less expensive than radial brakes.
Right. Are they off the shelf
with
Brembos, or do you have to get them made as well?
They don't make those anymore, because those were the true race version of the non-radial Brembo brakes. So those are custom order from Brembo.
Wow.
They're also made for carbon discs, right? Because this has carbon discs.
Right. Now, did I see one of these running around on the... Did Bike do something where they rode one on the road with carbon? Did that have carbon discs?
It's this one, yeah.
Yeah.
It's this exact bike.
They'll work?
Yeah, they work, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So all that
so they're made by a Swedish company.
Yeah.
So they are carbon ceramic.
Right.
I couldn't tell you exactly.
And again, that silhouette is exact.
But they weigh nothing,
Yeah. And again, it's another detail, isn't it? That. Because your eye is drawn to the details, isn't it? You look at it, you think, that looks like an NSR500. Then you get stuck in. To me, it is.
Yeah.
And it is really, isn't it? In a way,
that's the goal, isn't it?
Yeah.
That you pay attention to the little details.
Yeah.
So that the replica becomes a true replica.
Yeah. So you can't split the apart. Like saying, unless you pulled it apart or you knew them inside out, you're not going to know, are you?
No, I mean you have to know an NSR500 really well.
Yeah.
To look at it and say that's not real.
I guess that's quite hard, because am I right thinking that the V4 was only ever leased out to teams?
Yeah.
Like no one owned them. It was only the V-twin that...
Honda used to crush them.
Did they?
Yeah. Yeah,
But
they used to crush all the parts.
They've got a museum there, don't they? And they every so often they start the bikes up and sort of run up and down and things. I imagine that's probably their
Honda owned,
Honda museum.
Yeah. Which this makes this even more remarkable, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That it's got to this.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, maybe another manufacturer it might be easy because there's parts a little bit more.
I mean,
accessible.
Yamaha ran privateers, right? The Rock 500s, right? They ran Yamaha factory engines, nearly factory engines.
Yeah.
And it was slightly down on power to the factory, but at least they owned engines, and they had a bike that was essentially a Yamaha 500 race bike.
Yeah, and then privateer bikes will be somewhere in circulation, won't they, where these things are.
I know where there's 2 of them are.
Really?
Yeah. Well, that's why we started with the geometries, right? Comparing it to the Rock 500.
Right.
And once you start, looking at the measurements, wheelbase, ride height, center of gravity, swinging arm lengths, frame geometry, you start to appreciate just how much smaller these things are compared to a British superbike or a world superbike.
Yeah, they're a dot of a thing, really, aren't they?
Yeah,
even on the bench. At least,
I know.
6 inches, it's
I mean, when it's on wheels, when it's down on the floor and you push it around, it's literally like 250.
Yokes, things like that, all made by yourself?
All made by us, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And even, things like preload adjusters are copies of the original NSR500, right? So this is all custom made. This is, it just literally everything is bespoke. And the details, paid attention to the small details to get it to the level of replica that this is.
Yeah.
So
And
we're really pleased with this. Yeah.
The small details what counts, because if it was slightly, but your eye's drawn to the things that are wrong normally.
Yeah,
isn't it, rather than
absolutely.
what's right.
And you
So-
spot them. Yeah, you
you
spot
do,
those
don't you?
things.
Yeah.
So that's why we tried really hard to, to have someone look at it and stand around for 10 minutes and say, I can't see anything that's wrong.
Engine-wise, again, so you look, even looking in here, you've got the logo and the colour.
Yeah.
So it's an RG500 engine.
It's an RG500 engine.
But it doesn't look like one.
No.
So the process of turning an RG500 engine, is that what they are?
Yes.
So that's just, can we look?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So this is
one in build, right? So these are
they're your donors.
These are original engines.
Yeah.
And so this is one that's in process.
Right. So you can see, I can see some of the similarities, like with the cases, but then like the bit on the side there.
Right. So so there's a lot of things that we do to this engine to make it work well in an NSR500 replica, and of course it is a square 4, not a V4.
Yeah.
But it is a better base to start from than a RD500 engine. So it makes more power, it weighs less, and it carries the center of gravity higher up.
Okay.
Right. The RD500 is really it's a compromised engine, I would say.
Right.
So and then we put a race generator on. So that takes a lot of weight and inertia out.
Yeah.
We fitted a hydraulic dry clutch, and then of course we tuned the top end. So the top end comes out to 570.
Yeah.
So it ends up being a 570cc engine.
Yeah.
Rebuilt cranks. All the parts are new.
Yeah.
And then O-ringed heads. So that's how we end up with 130 horsepower at the rear wheel.
Yeah. The 570 stuff, that's kits. They are.
No, just use standard 500 barrels, and you just bore them out.
Just bore them out.
570, and use the correct pistons for that size.
Right.
And then a lot of porting and tuning and pipes to the correct dimensions.
And then the case that goes on this side that makes it look like a bloody.
Yeah, I don't think I have a case here now, but you have to look at that. Yeah, we make those. So we make the bits that go on here for the race generator. We make the bits for all the dry clutches. Yeah. Right, so that's a dry clutch for an RG500. So we start off by a super finished crown wheel.
Yeah.
And then the basket, the drum, and then the pressure plate, and then that goes on the side. You can get dry clutches from people like Nova.
Nova,
but they retain the cable clutch, right?
Okay.
So what we're trying to do with this is reduce the width and the weight of the engine, right? So that it works well in an NSR500.
Yeah.
So if you have if you have a cable operated dry clutch, it still sticks out a fair ways because you've got to have the mechanism on the outside of the clutch. And where this has nothing on the outside because it's got a hydraulic actuation that comes from the other side.
Wow. Right. Again, that's another level of detail that no one's doing that, are they? No one else is.
No, I don't think there's anybody else that you can get a hydraulic dry clutch for an RG500 engine. And again, it's why do all that? Well, so that it fits inside the original bodywork without having to modify the original bodywork.
Because then that would detract from its overall. If you've got you've got an accommodator.
On the first generation of the NSR500, we didn't do that, and so we had to modify the original bodywork because the engine was just not the right size.
Right.
So you have to split the belly pan. You have to make the belly pan wider.
Okay.
And then it starts to look not quite right.
Yeah.
So as you go through iterations of replicas, you try to correct those things. And one of the things we had to do is just modify these engines. I think we saved about 8 kilos of weight.
Did you?
From an original RG500.
Going to hydraulic.
Yeah. If you look at this, right, you've got a big thing sticking out here. You've got a big thing sticking out there.
Yeah.
So those things been reduced. And and then a few internal changes. So yeah, so we saved about 8 kilos, and they've been reliable. We know we've not had a single engine failure, and as we know, a certain British superbike rider, caned it around Donington Park for it.
I watched it. It was insane.
And the engine, the engine performed absolutely flawlessly. I was on track with him on my Ducati. Yeah. And the Ducati obviously is faster down the straight, but I remember, I'm not obviously nowhere near as fast. I'm dead slow, and I thought I was near, the left side of the track so you could turn in, and I was on the brakes on the near the left edge of the track, and Kyle Wright just came steaming up the outside.
The outside
with no brakes, it just disappeared.
Yeah.
And then I said, I built that.
Yeah. That which is lovely to see. Yeah.
You can overtake me all day long. So that was one of those moments where you say, yeah. Life is good.
Yeah, absolutely it is. Yeah.
We literally didn't make a single change all day long. The only thing we had to do is we had to re-bleed the brakes because he was using them. So we had to quickly bleed the brakes halfway through. And tire pressures, and that's all we did all day. No adjustment to suspension, which I was surprised at. I would thought for sure, he would say, I want a bit more of this, a bit more of that. It was spot on.
Wow. It's so carburation wise then. So it's what you're running.
So carburation wise, we use TMX 35s, 35mm carbs. So the inlet tract is completely modified. So that it accepts 35mm carbs, and of course it's got enclosed air boxes with cold feeds. So the intake system is nowhere near standard. Right. Anything but.
Bit of a work of art.
Yeah.
So is that running off the standard intakes at the front there on the side?
Yeah. So now obviously you can see it's a square four with the carb sticking out the side.
Well, yeah, you can see that, but. Like you say, this is all enclosed on the original, where the carb's sitting on the original.
The carbs would sit as a bank in the V.
In the V.
In the V.
Four in a line.
4 in a row. Yeah.
Oh right.
Yeah.
Right. You've done well to get them in a narrow space.
Yeah, the NSR500 engine is very narrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's got a single crank. They're sitting
so
there.
This tract on there goes.
These
go that way.
They're going that
way.
Yeah.
Right.
So both of these feed into the centre of the engine.
I'm with you, yeah. But then once you put that on and that butts up against that,
you can't see it,
You can't see it, can you? No. So it's
and these are, truly functionals, right? So the air comes in through here, comes into there.
All sealed.
And these are sealed up against the fairing.
So the fairing forms part of the air box. Almost.
And it makes a big difference.
Does it? Yeah.
It makes a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, to fit air boxes, you then have to fit a different generator because the original generator would be too big. You couldn't fit a side airbox. And the same thing on the clutch side. So, all these things, they fit together and they, one determines what the other thing has to look like.
What exhausts are on them?
These are full titanium exhausts with full titanium silencers. They're bespoke, obviously.
Yeah. Silhouette-wise as well, are they shaped as close as they can be?
So this little exhaust hanger bracket is an exact copy of the original.
Yeah.
The silencer clamp is a copy of the original, and the way they're routed is a exact copy of.
This is nice as well. The way you've got them just to tip in slightly because that's.
Believe me, it was all. Discussed and it's got to be exactly this way.
Because if
it's got to be covered slightly there and there.
Right.
And it can't stick out too far. All of those things. It's just there's thousands of little details in there that I can't remember them all now.
No.
But it's things like that make the difference.
Yes, because you look at it, don't you? And you think that looks just like
the quick change system, right? And the chain adjusters. They're a copy of the original, and the way you take the wheel out, that is a quick change system. That all of that is engineered and made, to not only to function like the original, but also to look like the original.
Yeah.
Things like the instrumentation, right? So the shift light is non-original, right? The original didn't have a shift light, but the Tacho is a replica of the original. This is not original. So this is a remade Tacho. Right, so this is a 3D printed housing with a custom-made dial and the internals are from an NSR125.
An NSR125?
Well, NSR125. It's
they?
going to be a two-stroke tackle.
Yeah. We've got like a horn, I take it.
It has a horn,
is
because
this
for
running
the daylight MOT. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this, you can get a daylight MOT on this. And it has a horn. Yeah, the yellow button is a horn.
That's mad.
The other button down here is
Yep.
electric chokes. So it's got electric chokes.
Okay.
So the carbs have been converted for an electric choke. So you simply press the button and the chokes pull in,
Yeah.
and then you can start it, and then you just release the button.
Wow.
Rather than having more cables.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you have 2 cables per carb, and with enclosed air boxes, the less cables you have going in and out
The
of the
better,
airbox,
because
the
it's easier to seal.
makes it easier.
Thumb brake as well. So
Yeah, so this particular customer wanted a thumb brake
Yeah.
because Mick Doohan ran a thumb brake, and
'Cause
this
he
is
does, yeah.
a Mick Doohan replica.
So if I say Felix, I would like one of these.
Exactly like that.
Exactly like this, yeah. Yeah.
You're well above 50.
That's not as much as I was expecting. Really?
Really?
For the work that's gone into that, honestly,
Yeah.
because you look how expensive motorbikes are now.
Yeah.
Right. Wow.
Cancel that extension.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah,
Cancelled it, yeah.
I'll get the order book. Yeah, you can put your name down.
Oh, I don't think I'd ride it though. It'd just be, well, you'd have to have a little go, wouldn't you?
You have to ride it. Oh,
Yes,
you
you would,
have-
yeah.
that's why they're made. I mean,
I know.
yeah, if you're going to stick
you
it in the
would, yeah.
lounge.
No, you
that-
wouldn't build one for me, would you?
Yeah, well, people that have Panigale V4s and they spend $5.5 grand on a new exhaust.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Those super Legras, aren't they were they 70 or something?
But, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer for me. It's a no-brainer. You could buy a V4S for 25 grand. Well,
Yeah, no, it's a base model. Yeah.
you know what? It's
Yeah.
not
No, it's not a bespoke.
It's not a bespoke kit, and it's not even a patch on.
No.
I know I'm slightly biased because I love
Yeah.
500s.
And
yeah.
this attracts attention, right? I mean,
Of course
you
it
know,
does.
You stick
Yeah.
this in the paddock, and
Yeah.
people come by and look at it, and
Or you ride it to the shop on that day, and you think, "Oh, I'll take this down." It's just
down in Lincolnshire. That was funny, by the
that
way.
is
It was-
meant. Yeah.
But it is truly lovely to ride. I mean, truly lovely to ride.
Yeah.
The corner speed, the lack of engine braking, the way it picks up the throttle, and
Yeah.
it's not scary to ride. It's
Is it
very
not?
tractable. No,
Right.
it's not. It's not like a light switch when the power band comes in.
Yeah.
It is very tractable.
Yeah. Because you need it right. You don't need a light switch. That
No,
would detract
because,
from
because
it.
if
again,
it's
wouldn't
scary to ride,
Yeah.
you don't ride it.
No.
Right? You just stick it in the lounge and look at it.
it? Maybe that's where my comment came from, because you look at it, and I'm already now, my brain is convinced it is one, and you
that picture of Gardner.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, exactly.
We've seen all our heroes
Yeah.
being fired off out the front of these.
Yeah.
So you think,
And you got to remember too that modern tyres make a massive.
of course, yeah.
So riding this with modern tyres is a lot more enjoyable.
Yeah, yeah. Do your customers, do they place an order, and then is it sort of, do they come and see, or do you just sort of finish
Usually,
it?
no,
Do
usually,
they like to be a part of the?
Yeah.
to
And we have a
see the-
discussion of what spec it's
Yeah.
going to be,
Yeah.
because obviously, this is a very, very high. This is the highest spec that I've built. But obviously, you can pare down costs considerably by using different wheels, different brakes,
Yeah.
different forks,
Yeah.
different tank, different swinging arm. So you can bring the cost down to more reasonable levels. But building an engine to this spec is very expensive.
Yeah.
And that's on top of buying an RG500 engine.
Of course, you don't. Yeah. And so are they getting?
Yeah, it's just whatever you can find.
Yeah.
And most of them that you can find, you have to rebuild anyways.
Yeah.
And in fact, if you want an engine this spec, there's no point buying a standard engine that's been rebuilt, because we have to change so many things. So you might as well buy one that's, you know, seized, right?
Yeah.
Because we have to rebuild it from scratch
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah.
It's a lot cheaper to buy a seized engine than to buy.
Easier to
you know,
find
fully
as well,
rebuilt.
isn't it? Because there's paperweights,
exactly,
aren't they, until you get your hands on them.
So again, engine spec, you know, varies a lot. Cost is determined by that. So those are all discussions we have.
Of course,
Then I create a spec sheet, you know, build spec, and says, you know, here's what we're going to do, and they get a copy of it, and you know, we know what we're doing then.
Do people get carried away? Because I would get
of course
carried
they do. Well, look at this bike.
Yeah. I bet this had no options ticked at the start.
This is, you know, you know, this had standard forks in originally.
Did it?
No, it doesn't look right. We need different forks.
Honestly.
Right, different forks. You know, the standard R6 swinging arm in it. No, it doesn't look right. We need different swinging arm.
Yeah.
You know, it's different tank. You know,
I will get.
And you know, if you have the money, you just keep
going. Keeps going. Yeah. Because you're not getting one anywhere else. So, you know, you've one of five really. So I suppose it's one of five or one of, you know, well, one of one, because they're all so unique.
Of this
aren't they?
particular model, this particular spec, there's another one.
That's insane that you can have something that's so unique, isn't it? It's just, I love it. I bloody love it. I do. It's ace. It's something to be, you know, massive. I know you don't need me to tell you, but I'd be massively proud of this.
Believe me, and feel privileged that I can build these.
Yeah.
You know that, you know, to actually, you know, have a business that flourishes building these is.
What a business that is, isn't it? Yeah. The level of craftsmanship in it is truly.
And the pleasure I get is not just fulfilling people's dreams, but the engineering aspect, right? That I get to design all the bits that go in it, right? And somebody says, you know, I want this to look exactly like the factory version. So, you know, then you sit down and you design it, and that process is highly enjoyable for me.
Yeah. Your fingerprints are all over it, aren't they? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then this will be here for this is.
And I don't mind them going. You know, I don't mind them going. That's okay. I have no issue with that at all.
Felix, I'm going to miss this, and it's not even mine.
Right? I mean, you know, having you know, British Superbike champion ride it around Donington Park and watching him do it is just.
It's an honour, that, isn't it? Yeah.
You know, the best validation that I could ever get.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching. Let us know in the comments what GP replica bike that you would have, and like and subscribe, and we'll see you soon.